by. All right, we have our man, the myth, the legend, Carter the Power from Nottingham is joining us. Carter,
oh, what's up, Blake? How you doing, man? I see people are already worried about Todd Harris. Really? Todd Harris? And I can understand. Like, I still have some mental scars from how he played early in the season, but he started playing better, and he's the kind of guy that you cheer for. Some of my favorite LSU Tigers, Blake, ever, are the guys that come into loaded classes with guys that are clearly more talented than he is. And in his class, if I'm not mistaken, I think Grant Delpit and Jacoby Stevens were both higher rated guys, and he's still decided to come to LSU and fight through the injury, and he's got one more year to prove it, baby. Let's go, Todd. Let's go.
Yeah, and Carter, it's not that what's funny is, I know you remember this, and you might have still been on the beat. Dave Aranda in the recruiting said that Todd Harris is one of the smartest players he had ever been around, right? I think that he sometimes overthinks it. Like I was watching the Florida game, and they just did a little rub route, and he's just standing there like he's confused. Like, I know the kid knows what to do. It's kind of like start playing and start reacting other than stop thinking so much. Now, you've done a lot of breakdown of film, Carter. Is that what you see in Todd Harris? Maybe some overthinking and not just playing football?
It's not just him, Blake. It's everybody. Last year that was certainly the case.
Absolutely.
Just too much thinking. And, everyone saw the quote that Andre Anthony said earlier today about communication, and you're going to keep hearing that over and over. Communication, communication, communication. And it is going to help out that Durante Jones is coming back from coaching Harrison Smith and Jesse Bates at the NFL level. That's going to be key. And obviously, if Derek Davis, I know your audience is hyped up about him. I'm hyped up about him. And if Sage Ryan lives up to the 5-star billing, we'll be okay. And it's fascinating because you look historically at 5-star defensive backs at LSU. That's the only position where, whether it's out of state or in state, every 5-star defensive back since 2011, according to the 247 composite, has hit at LSU. Not only has hit, they were exceptional. Kevin Tolliver was the only one that wasn't exceptional. Every single one of them were all-American, all-SEC type of players. So if you factor that in with Sage Ryan coming in, he should be able to play right away, just depending on where they actually play him.
Yeah, and look, Carter, I completely agree. And look, I do, those guys have talent. Let's not act like they don't have, because they do. When you're playing Alabama and you're playing Ole Miss and you have to go up against Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide and you have to go up against Lane Kiffin, of all people, he's going to confuse you. He's going to throw things at you that you've never seen, you haven't seen in high school, and they're going to get burned from inexperience. Okay, that's going to happen. Devontae. Well, I guess you could say Devontae Smith did some things to Derek Stingley that no one else in the country has ever done, and it might have been just from a lack of experience. When Derek Stingley looks at the sideline and Smith is down the sideline, is that a little bit of a lack of experience? Let's stay on the defensive side, Carter, very quickly. We saw this defensive line. Glenn Logan looks like he's trimmed down 20 or 30 pounds. On this defensive line, is that the core of this team with all of those guys coming back and the athleticism and the freaks that they're going to have up front defensively?
Yeah, they get an upgrade, with Andre Carter coming in, and he was pretty good at the NFL level. It's going to be fascinating. What's going to be very fascinating with this group is, are they going to play a 3-man front or a 4-man front? That's going to be debated for forever. It's going to be multiple, whatever. The most important thing, though, is keeping contained in the running game. And that's just not the defensive line. That's the entire defense. And basically,
praise Jesus, you said it. Thank you. Keep going. Keep going. Praise Jesus.
So it's funny because, on my YouTube channel, we've been doing some breakdowns of this. The LSU defense, we talk about how bad they were, and they were bad. So in 8 out of 10 games, they gave up 7 yards per play. In the prior 41 games, under Dave Aranda, they only gave up three times. They gave up 7 yards per play. So they were beyond historically bad. They were very, very, very bad. However, they led the SEC in 3 and outs. They were amongst the top 3 in havoc percentage, according to the StatCat, top 3 in pressure percentage. They were a very good turnover defense. Where they had issues were just the simple, basic high school things, keeping contained in the running game and not giving up deep passes in the passing game. If they fix those 2 things, they will by default get better. And I could get into a deeper breakdown of that, but those are the 2 simple things. And Durante Jones is a very bright guy. He probably watched film and saw the same thing that I saw, because he's way smarter than I'll ever be when it comes to dissecting film and football. So if they could fix those 2 things with all the experience they have coming back, if Mike Jones is as good as he's going to be,
Who?
Okay, I knew that was coming. Houston Rap is in the house. I love it.
I can't help myself, Carter. I can't help it.
No, you got to do it.
I get beat red. Look at me. He's my favorite player right now. I get beat red when someone says Mike Jones. I can't help myself. But you're right, Mike Jones, right.
And here's the thing. If they're just decent, if everyone comes back, and if LSU can figure out their secondary, if they decide to, I do think LSU is going to experiment with McLaughlin or Jay Ward at safety. I do think that would be something they look into. If they fix just those 2 core tenet principles, they'll be better. Now, this is where it gets fascinating, is that it's not all the time who you play, it's when you play them. So
correct.
The roughest part of the season that Durante Jones is going to deal with, and I know we're months away, is that he does, in the middle of the season before the bye week, have to go from Lane Kiffin to Dan Mullen in back-to-back weeks, which, those are the 2 best play callers in the SEC by a pretty wide margin. So that's going to be tough. But outside of that, the defense is definitely going to be better next season.
We have a couple questions for you in here, Carter, and I want to get to this one. Craig Schilling says, #AskCarter, who is a guy that you see could be the next star with development from the new coaches? I'm going to start this one off on defense, and then we can go to offense and go back to that question. Quite honestly, it's Jay Ward for me, Carter. I have been all over this kid. We saw what he did against Arkansas, right? He sealed that game. And look, you're from North Louisiana, Arkansas border. He won that game with the strip at the end and then the block kick. And then what he did against Oklahoma, what he did against Ole Miss, what he did against Florida. I like the fact that you talked about him moving out to safety. I like that. I think that could be something. I think you're right there. For you on the defense, and then we'll go to offense, who's that breakout star for you?
I love Jay Ward. The funniest thing about him is that the struggles he had early in the season were in games that he shouldn't even have been playing. He was playing due to emergency. He wasn't even fully healthy. So that shows you that kid's tough. I really like him. It's going to be interesting how they rotate the defensive ends, because there's obviously 3 guys who are way better than everyone else, and that's Ali Gay, Andre Anthony, and BJ Ojolari. What I would do, and this was something Dave Aranda did in 2019, he did a really good job of rotating guys in and out on clear passing downs. So what the LSU defense decided to do last season, which was keep the same 4 defensive linemen in on every single down, which you can do. That is traditionally how it's done. That's how they do it a lot of the times in the NFL. But in college, you got hundreds of great defensive linemen at LSU. So you should rotate those guys in and out. So, I do think BJ Ojolari is special. I do think he has double-digit sack potential. What's going to be fascinating is on 3rd down, do you knock Andre Anthony inside and put Ojolari at end, or do you start that's going to be the big breakout thing, is how Andre Carter and Coach O decide to rotate that entire position, because that big number 0 is coming in as well with Mason Smith.
And another thing to your point, and look, I talked about this a lot, especially from being a former offensive lineman. You could kick an Ali Gay in and let Ojulari be on the outside because he has that size, right? Like he's long. We saw Carter too, and I know that you watched that Mississippi State film. I listened to you when you talked about like chasing Hines and stuff like that. He deflected a lot of passes. Okay, so you could do a lot, and I agree with you there. Carter, let's flip over to the offensive side. I made the joke, the old Booger McFarland joke, that Miles Brennan was a Popeye's biscuit away from being a tight end. My man's put on some poundage. But the man, he's put on some weight. He looks like he's still rifling the ball down there. But Max Johnson has to get the first snaps, as Ed Orgeron talked about with the last 2 games of last season, right? Like, you got to throw him in there, correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, look. Maybe for continuity or whatever. I don't think Jake Peetz is anywhere close to deciding what he wants to do at quarterback. You know, Miles spoke to the media today and said that Jake Peetz calls him 2 times a day, and he calls all the quarterbacks and he checks in. And then here comes Garrett Nussmeier. Here's the thing, you know, obviously with Max Johnson being the quarterback, you have a radically different offense. You have a more dual threat option at quarterback, and he is left-handed compared to Miles Brennan, who's right-handed. So you do have those 2 different things. What was very fascinating from the practice footage today was Jake Peetz, and this was just a little snippet. Don't ever get carried away with just whatever little thing you catch on practice. It's practice. But it was interesting to see Jake Peetz work with the running backs and the quarterbacks at the same time, because we all know LSU doesn't win the title in 2019 if Joe and Clyde weren't, you know, one of the best running back quarterback passing duos we've ever seen. So getting that aspect of the offense is going to be huge. So yeah, you know, everybody wants a simple answer. I want to know if Miles Brennan's going to be the starter. That is what you hear all the time. It's not that simple. It is not that simple. I do think it does come down to those 2 guys. I do think TJ is a distant third with Garrett Nussmeier, and how Jake Peetz decides he wants to run this offense comes down to what he wants out of this offense. I do think if LSU can't get that connection with the running back out of the backfield, it does radically change how you want to run your offense. And correct. I think Jake wants to see if that's going to be something that he's going to have to deal with, because if your running back can't catch out of the backfield and you want to run majority of your plays out of shotgun, that means your running back must stay in and personal protect, because if he's no threat as a receiver, it's just a waste to just run him out.
Well, and 2 things I'm going to talk about what you said. Number 1, the biggest takeaway for me was that to him working with the running backs, because look, he's been with Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey was almost MVP when he was with him, and we all know what Christian McCaffrey did, right? I agree with you there. You know what, Carter, too, another big thing for me today, seeing Jake Peetz, was the headset. Okay, like he's on the sidelines with DJ Mangus. They have on a headset. They're calling in plays. It's day 2, right? Like day 2 in spring practice, and they have headsets on, and they're calling plays, and they want to go fast. That was something else that I found really interesting. Billy Vick on YouTube says, hashtag Ask Carter, the 2 guys to watch that he thinks is Bryce Langston and Jack Besh. It's interesting when we talk about guys that are coming in. Jack Besh is a guy that they could see some early playing time. Carter, we talked a little bit on the running backs. Who do you think is the biggest weapon for LSU? I mean, obviously Kayshon Boutte, but outside of him, do you think that there's an emerging star there that can complement a Kayshon Boutte?
So here's the funniest thing about Kayshon is, you know, we saw what happened against Ole Miss, and it was spectacular. I do believe Jere Jenkins is the clear number 2. And look, I understand. Your audience is very high on these 5 guys coming in, and as you should be. They're all fantastic. They all do things differently. And obviously Jack Besh being a potential tight end is someone to look out for. But Jeray Jenkins, it's not just the fact that I do have a bias towards guys that come in a loaded classes. We were talking about Todd Harris earlier. Jeray Jenkins came in with Jamar and Terrace Marshall. I mean, we're talking about two guys that are clearly better than him, and he knew that going in, and he still went to LSU, didn't transfer, stuck it out. And even before leading into last season, we weren't talking about Jeray Jenkins at all, and he still just kept plowing. He still just kept working. And from start to finish, he was the one guy that was consistently in the lineup. And here's what's funny, Blake. When you look at the advanced statistics, when you look at average depth of target, when you look at yards per catch, when you look at drop percentage, he was amongst the LSU best players in all of those categories. So sometimes it's not just the catches. It's what can you do as far as shifting a defense? And because Jeray Jenkins is really good at running deep routes, intermediate routes, and he is a team-first guy, I do believe you will see a clear-cut number 2 with Kayshawn on the other side. And when you have two deep options on the outside, and make it so much easier for your slot options, which look to be Coy Moore, Trey Palmer. I know some people are high on Trey Palmer. I'm fading Trey just a little bit. Highest drop percentage on the team. He should have emerged by now. This is put up or shut up time for big number 33. And I know you got a lot of viewers in Kentwood, Louisiana, and I don't want them coming after me, okay?
Oh, them Rude's going to start throwing them punches now. You better be careful.
You got to be careful. Trust me. I understand. And my viewers have brought this up. It's like, hey, I'm from Kentwood. I didn't like what you said about Trey. Well, don't drop. But
you're being realistic, right? Like I'll say it. Like you're being realistic, okay? So let's not act like, Carter, you're not being realistic. Interesting to add on to your point and continuing about Jeray Jenkins, to be that big and that great of a route runner, right? Like the kid runs exceptional routes that I kind of look at it sometimes. And look, I've been breaking down a lot of the film along with you. Now you do a great job on it. I've been watching the Florida game, and that first touchdown when he just kind of sneaks by. Like, how did a man 6'4", 210 pounds sneak by you like that? He's good. He's good, bro. He's got some game to him, doesn't he?
He's really good. I'm blown away when I watch him. And here's the thing. This is a scary thing about it is when you look even deeper, you see that, LSU has this deep history at wide receiver. Everyone's familiar with it, but it's not just at wide receiver. It's all these guys are from Louisiana as well. I mean, you look historically, all these 3-star receivers from Louisiana have been phenomenal. You look at DJ Chark. He was a 3-star. Justin Jefferson was a 3-star. Racey McMath, when he was healthy, was, pretty good last season when he had his opportunities. So, it's funny. I really do think Jeray Jenkins is special. And I do think, 12-game, 13-game season, I could see a 40, 50 catch season out of him next year.
The man that owes you some chicken wings in the comments. Man. He says, man, them Rude's going to come after from the water tower to come get on you. So, yeah, they are. If you've never been to Kentwood, Louisiana, that water tower, it's intimidating, man. It's intimidating. Carter, a couple more questions and we'll get you out of here. Dude, you're always fantastic as always. I was listening to you in reference to when you're talking about the offensive line play, you talked about Chase and Hines. Just in an observation, now I didn't dig deep into it like you did. It looked like they were missing some blocks, right? Like this stone cold missing blocks. And then Carter, I started digging into it a little bit. Okay. It looked like they were wanting the running backs to take a blitzing linebacker and for Chase and Hines not to take a blitzing linebacker and help protect on the other side. It's just, they looked so confused on what they were doing last year, regardless of what the protection calls were supposed to be. Can they get a little bit more cohesiveness going into this season? And look, Deculus was a big guy in returning that said, "Hey, I'm coming back," and then everybody said, "Look, he took a long time, but once he said he was coming back, we're coming back." That continuity is going to play well, right?
I do think so, and I do think Jason Hines will be better than what he was last season. Once again, anytime I hate saying anything critical about any player. I promise you. But if Trey Palmer was who we and I'm going back to Trey Palmer just for a second because I don't want anyone to feel like I hate the guy. I don't. It's just LSU wouldn't have taken 5 wide receivers if they thought that they had something with some of these other guys. But anyway, like let's say Jason Hines, for instance, he really struggled last season, and it shocked me how much he struggled considering LSU had some other options. And look, it's
Cardell Thomas,
nothing,
Anthony Bradford. I mean, the list goes on, right?
or like they did against Florida, that when Jason Hines went out with an injury, they plugged Cam Wire in, and it was just fine. And
Right.
Jason Hines was a huge liability on the long run that TDP had against Alabama. It was an amazing run. Everyone had their block. Jason Hines got away with the hold on that long run on Dylan Moses. And that's, even though the end result was great, it should have been called back. So
completely okay with that, by the way.
yeah, I am too. I'm not complaining. Don't think that I'm complaining.
I know. I'm just listening.
But here's what's really fascinating is that there is a continuity thing, and they were talking about this with the media today. They put 3 offensive linemen in front of the media today. We had Ed Ingram, we had Liam, and we had Austin Deculus. So we should feel comfortable with those 3 guys starting. Do you put Deculus in at right guard and put in Doomerville? Here's what I think's going to happen. I do believe they will start the same 5 from last season.
I do too.
But be a little bit more willing to pull a quicker trigger and maybe put Cam Wire in at one of those spots. And I understand offensive line coaches hate benching their guys. They believe in continuity but sometimes you just have to do it. And especially if a player is consistently struggling, consistently picking up the blitzes and whatnot. I'm hopeful for Hines. I'm hopeful for Rosenthal to be fully healthy, but we'll see what happens. One quick stat, though, about the offensive line is that, according to the blue chip ratio, is one of the lowest percentage blue chip ratio, which basically means 3- and 4-star recruits. So you have a Doomerville guy. You have Garrett Dellinger. If you absolutely have to need him, put him out there. Let's just see what happens. So we'll see how this plays out, and hopefully James Craig figures out a very important position.
I've known Adrian McGee my whole life, so I have the ability to say this. Okay. Ed Ingram came back. Okay. In my opinion, outside of Lloyd Cushenberry, Adrian McGee was your best offensive lineman in 2019 when he returned. Hashtag Vanderbilt. Remember when he just creamed those 2 guys in Vanderbilt?
Yeah.
Ed Ingram returned that week, right? Okay. So I think that you're right in that open competition will help. And I think a little bit of scheme is going to help this team too on an offensive line perspective. I mean, when you got SEC StatCat running out there saying Miles Brennan had more time in the pocket and then Max Johnson was 2 and TJ Finley was 4th, okay, they have the ability. It's just firing the ball off, getting the ball out there and being able to run the ball. Carter the Power Bryant is our guest. One more question, Carter, and you've been a gracious host. I know what you're feeling, by the way, when you say you don't like talking negatively about people or players. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it, right? But you got to sometimes be a little realistic. Carter,
right.
Last question. I'm going to get you out of here. I know it's way too early. What do you think LSU's record is going to be next season? What does your gut tell you? How do you think next season goes? And I know we're a long way off, and this can change, and we can talk ourselves into an undefeated Joe Burrow-like season, and maybe not that crazy, but what do you see this team going into next season?
So, look, I say this to everyone that watches my content, Power Hour LSU on YouTube. Every time someone asks you this question, and I'm going to answer it even more special for you, Blake, I don't try my hardest to get an exact number. Instead, I want to get a bare minimum number. What is the bare minimum amount of wins that is good enough for you to feel comfortable enough with the coaching staff moving forward? Okay. We're talking bare minimum. All right. I would say the bare minimum number next season would be 8-5. Now that's bare minimum. If LSU doesn't get to 8 wins, that's when you really have to start reevaluating the entire operation. 9 should be the real minimum, but next season should be the standard 10 win. And if you have a championship standard program, you should never not have a double-digit win season. Now, the good thing about LSU's schedule is that they don't have any back-to-back top 15 recruiters that they have to play. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have tough back-to-back games, but that does help out. So I think LSU, with the talent that they returned, with the coaches, in the past, first-year coordinators have actually been a good thing, not a bad thing outside of last year. So I do think LSU will be around a 10, 11 win team, and that would be pretty good. And look, it might be the year next year for our Tigers because Florida's replacing their entire offense. Alabama's replacing their entire offense. This could be a championship window if everyone stays healthy and we find an identity.
Hell, Texas A&M. I mean, Texas A&M is too. I mean, hell, I lied. Carter, I gotta ask you for a favor, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Last question. Cody Kennedy, a guy that went to Arkansas, is now on the coaching staff, the tight ends coach, is now at Arkansas. Cool. I think it's the biggest outside of coordinators, the biggest pickup coaching-wise in the SEC. Watch out what I'm telling you. I know you have a lot of Arkansas contacts. Just watch out for it. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. I agree with everything you're saying, brother. You know how much I love you. I'm sorry about last night. You know I got a little one. Just drives my my mind goes blank, bro. It just really does. Carter, you've been fantastic. I love your show. Tell everybody where they can find all your great stuff, my man.
All you got to do is go to YouTube, Power Hour LSU, POWERHOUR LSU. And look, it's not and I agree with that commenter right there. 9 wins is the floor. I would say 8 is like the bare floor, but like 9 is, that should be the floor. Right. Yeah, Power Hour LSU is,
I was trying to get to this very quickly, Carter, before you get out of here. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Our friend says, #Ask Carter, are you going to drop me some big faces for my calls? Support Miller to the Rose Bowl?
Faces? What is he talking about? What is it? I don't know. Steven's wild. Steven still owes me chicken wings. I promise you. I'm not making this up. This is. Oh, okay. I think I know. I think I know what he's saying. However, you can find Power Hour LSU. It's very deep LSU chatter. It's not like I'm always trying to find that little thing that's a little bit different. Like last week, the more I dug deeper, and this is going to sound wild, I saw that it's better for LSU if the Texas Longhorns are great. We want them to be great. And I explain why in the video. I'm not going to explain why here, but you want Texas to be great. And a big reason why is what happened in 2021. If you want to know all about that, just go to the channel and you'll find the video and it'll be great. Blake, thank you so much. And, God, you have all these great sponsors on Palm Street, Peach Street. All your sponsors are on Safe Street titles. I like that, man. I really do. But yeah, I appreciate you. Man.
You know why that is, huh, Carter?
Why is that?
Because I lived on Parker Street in Franklinton, Louisiana. It's not such a safe street. Luckily, we got out of there alive. That's all I'm going to say.
There you go. Well, Blake, I appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely, Carter. Thank you so much, my man. That is Carter.